Welcome to Poland, a history of 1,000 years. My name is Iwo Cyprian Pogonowski. Our lecture today will be the history of Polish saber, and also we will take advantage of a good weather outside in order to show you a little Polish castle not far from the town of Pulaski, Virginia, in which we have the collection of Polish art and historical materials, and where in my private residence we do have the television studio in which our programs on Poland, a history of 1,000 years, are being produced. So we are going to focus our attention today on the development of Polish saber and illustrate it in such a way that it should become obvious that the saber, which was introduced in Asia more than 1,000 years ago, probably closer to 2,000 years ago, on the ethnic borderlands between the Turkmen and the Mongols, that saber underwent some evolution during its development, and to Poland it came during the invasion of Europe by the Muslim Turks, who brought it after learning the use of it through various developments of the saber in India, in Persia, and finally by the Turks themselves. When the Turks managed to win the Battle of Kosovo in 1389 and defeated the Serbish army, the Serbish cavalry, which already was quite experienced in combat against the Turks, brought to Poland in their retreat the Turkish sabers. And so the Poles became acquainted with the Turkish saber, and it is a rather interesting development that Polish cavalrymen started using saber before the Polish government approved the weapon. And there was for a long time controversy, why do the cavalrymen use the saber instead of the rapier, the straight edge mace or sword, which was used in Western Europe and in Poland up to that time. Eventually, the Polish government agreed for the cavalrymen to use the saber, and the Polish practical field commanders knew well that the Polish saber, which was developed out of the Turkish saber, would produce much less of a shock to the hand of a cavalryman than any straight-edge weapon would produce. That it was much easier to lose the grip on a straight-edged sword than on a curved saber. Also, the center of percussion in the saber is located so that when a blow is delivered from the horse, the hand of the man holding the saber does not experience the jolt. And as a result, the control is much better. Now, the Poles have also adapted to the design of the saber ideas of their own, and we will follow the evolution of the Polish saber, which eventually produced the standard saber in the world of the 19th and 20th century. And so the American saber of today is essentially the shape of a Polish saber as developed in 16th and 17th century. So we will be able to cover the topics that I have mentioned in my opening statement, and we will closely follow the development of this. We see the horseman in a uniform of General Pulaski from Pulaski, Virginia Museum. It's a gala uniform, and the horse has the name Prince. In the background, the Polish castle that I mentioned before. The movements were those of greeting with the saber, as it was traditionally done, and now we are going to approach the area in which some of the basic movements of the saber will be shown. The Polish pennants are shown on the castle as we approach it, and pretty soon I'll be riding up the driveway in order to approach the scene, and the little dog follows, excited about the program. Now we see here the scenery in Virginia, near Pulaski, Virginia, and so we will see the thicket which existed here at the time of the War of American Independence, where General Pulaski was commanding the Polish Legion, And so we can see why he complained so much about lack of fodder for the horses, because most of it was a thicket, as we see it right now on the screen. And so the open meadows were not many at the time, and so for that reason there was a difficulty in getting enough fodder for the horses of the American cavalry of the War of American Independence. Now we see another shot of the Polish castle near Pulaski, Virginia, and soon we will be seeing the horse approaching to the location on which the basic movements of the cavalrymen of the past will be shown. The prince is galloping up the hill here, and we can see the gala uniform of General Pulaski on the screen right now. The saber is drawn, and the greeting from the saber indicates the beginning of the program. Now the basic overhand blows with the saber over the head of the horse, and the side with the main blow. The main blow and then return. The saber, having the blade sharp on both ends at the end, can make the return cut without reversing the position of the saber. So these are the basic movements of the cavalrymen. The over the hand, over the head of the horse, and on the other side from top, and then the possibility after making the basic blow to return. Now another greeting, and we are ready to put the saber back into the sheath. See the hairs of the hand of the horse. And so we saw the various cavalry movements as far as the saber is concerned of the horse. When I put the uniform of General Pulaski from the Museum of Pulaski in the town of Pulaski and county of Pulaski, near which is located my home that we have just seen on the screen. Now the American saber, which I have used, is a saber that is the mature and final form of a saber as shown on the screen at this time, and the shape of the saber is the one that was developed by the Polish cavalrymen in the 17th century. So the standard saber in the world today is the Polish version of the saber. And we have talked about the sabers being a product of evolution. American saber, which I have shown on the screen of the horse, is a saber that is basically a decorative saber of the American cadets. This one I have borrowed from Vice President of the Dominion Bank in Blacksburg, Virginia, Mr. Kwiatkowski. He owns this saber, and that was his saber when he was a cadet in Virginia Polytechnical Institute. So Frank Kwiatkowski was in a good mood and let us use his saber, which he usually keeps, of course, at home. Now, another saber which we have to consider in this situation is the prototype of a saber as it did arrive on the Polish scene in by the end of 14th century. Now this saber is an oriental saber, it's called kilij, and it has a pronounced bend. The form of this saber is what the Serbish and then Polish cavalrymen have seen. And what is interesting here to notice is that the saber has a cross guard which protects the hand. After a certain period of time, the Muslims did not like this shape because they have thought that this cross type of arrangement actually reminded them of the symbol of Christianity, the cross, and therefore they started bending over the ends of the guard so that it would look like half moon, which was of course the Turkish and Muslim emblem. So this saber has the feature of the evolution of the saber, which means the feather, so-called feather, is the sharp edge on the back side of the saber, which complements the basic sharp edge of the length in the frontal part of the saber. So the cavalryman, once he hit with the saber in the basically from front to rear direction, he could return with cutting blow without reversing his hand in using the sharp edge of the feather. So the saber was a product of very long evolution, and in Poland it entered the stage of development which produced the modern saber, and on it we will concentrate in a greater detail. So when we are dealing with the Polish development of the saber, we have to notice one very fundamental point which has to be brought out. Namely, when we take the Polish hussar saber of the 17th century, we see that to the crossbar that protects the hand, the Poles added a bar which was along the length of the saber, and which offered a greater protection for the hand. Now the blades themselves, which in Polish the word is brzeszczot, they were brought to Poland generally from good steel making centers in the world. One of them was Damascus in the Near East. Another was the type of blade that could be purchased in Toledo, Spain, where the Arabs have brought the Mid-Eastern metallurgical know-how to produce excellent blades. And also later the Germans in Essen were producing good blades as well. So what essentially was happening was that for a good quality blade, Polish cavalrymen preferred to have the imported blade later fitted to his hand. Now what do we mean when we talk about fitting the saber to the hand? When the grip of the saber is being prepared, the way it is built, with all the weight added to it because of the guard and because of whatever weight is added into the grip itself, this changes the mass of the saber. So when a man ordered the saber from a blacksmith, he would try the saber to see whether it works well with his hand. Now this idea to make handy the saber, or in Polish przykładna, so that the saber is fitting well, was tested in practical way by cutting action against some thin sticks or some other things to see whether the hand does not experience a shock at the time of contact between the blade and the object that was hit. So the way to, from the point of view of what we know today as physics, what has to be achieved is that the center of percussion in the blade and in the saber should be located in such a way that during the blow, the entire energy of the blow is delivered at the target, and there is no reaction into the hand, no jolt, no sudden jerk, which would possibly even threaten to pull the saber out of the hand of the cavalryman. So in preparing the Polish sabers, the Polish blacksmiths had basically a chance to add mass or proportion the mass of the saber by the way they worked on the grip. And so the earliest Polish invention was the addition of the guard in front of the hand. Then eventually this was brought to be an arc in which the guard would almost touch the handle itself. Now this is an important point, because as the blacksmith would hammer out the guard, the kabłąk as it's in Polish, the Polish the army engineers and practical specialists of the weapons, were inclined to leave a gap here at this point between the Kabul